recording the session just so that I'm sure there's some regulation somewhere or other that means that I have to tell you, oh, some people aren't hearing me. Give me a second. Can I just check if I've just had a wee message from Hazel just to check. Can anybody hear me? Am I hearable? 2 ticks. All right, okay. So Mary's saying that she can hear me, Hazel. So and it does look it to me. Oh, I just muted myself successfully. Hazel's going to log out and back in again. So hopefully, thank you to everybody. So that's good. As long as we know that it's only one person and I'm not just basically shouting into a cave. Although I've got to admit, this whole experience is a little bit like shouting into a cave because basically there's no feedback. And by the way, that's not me asking for it necessarily, like, please give me feedback. But it's funny when you can't see people's faces and how they react. You might all be sitting there like this going, oh my God. You know, but I'm hoping that our sessions are going down well. In the background here, I'm just going to set up because I'm going to share my screen with you again a little bit later on. So I just need to make sure that I am all set up, because if I'm going to have the holding slide on, then I can't have both things up at the same time. Okay, so we're all set up at the back. So hello, and I hope you all had a lovely weekend. My Wi-Fi issues continue. I'm getting a new router. Oh, check that. So apparently it's arriving today. So on Wednesday it'll be just like seamless, and everything will be fantastic. But hopefully we get through today without me having an unstable internet connection and everything works out okay. So we are on Monday. So just for the people in the future, just so that future people know, it is Monday, May the 18th of 2020. And we are all still in lockdown. How is the future? If you happen to be watching this in the future, I hope it's good. I hope that everything is happy and that you're hugging your relatives and generally having a good time. But for just now, we are having as best a time as we can with the situation that we have. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Brian Costello from Headstrong. I don't know why I couldn't spit out there where I was from. So I run a company called Headstrong. And as I say at the beginning of all of these, I'm not going to do a big introduction because that would just take for ages, and it would take like 5 minutes out of every session for me to do that. But to cut a long story short, I've been working in mental health now for 13 years with my own business and been involved in it for the last 17 years, and very, very excited to do these sessions now here's a question. Now I know that originally it was Women in Scottish Aquaculture. Wiser. I like wiser because it sounds like wiser. Wisa. Anyway, I don't know. But we're here anyway for all of these people and the Scottish Innovation in Aquaculture Centre. Can I get that right? I think I did without even looking as well. So it has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you for the first week. And now we've got 3 more lessons to go before we reach the end of our little block. And today what we're going to go into is we're going to extend what we began talking about last week. So we started last week by talking about this idea that thoughts cause feelings, basically, and how actually the way that our brain works is that we get these little pictures inside our heads, and what happens is that we then feel off the back of those little pictures that happen inside our heads. We then spoke about the idea of the bubble. It is wiser. I was right. I thought it did. It sounded like wiser. I thought that would be a cool thing. Fantastic. Thank you, Mary. We then talked about this idea of the bubble, that your mind is like a big filter. And basically what's happening is information comes flowing into your bubble. What happens is you are like ignoring some of it, you're bending some of it, and you're just making assumptions, which is actually therefore causing the ignorings and the bendings of the information that comes in. So we can both look at exactly the same thing and have entirely different emotional responses to it. Potentially, actually, your emotional response might be no emotional response at all, or mine might be. But then again, one of us might hate it and the other one might think it's fantastic. without going into too much detail, all we have to do, I've got a wee sticky out bit here, all we have to do at the moment is that we have to look at American politics to see that some people's bubbles are different from everybody else's. Is that kind of neutral enough, do you think? Anyway, I think you got what I was meaning. Anyway, so we all have these bubbles that happen. Now, how those bubbles are created is what we talked about on Friday. And we talked about this idea of the big bangs and these drip feeds and how our minds are created through these experiences, the nurture versus nature debate. And in my book, just because this is the book that I follow, if you like, I'm much more of a nurture person. I think if we just assume that it's just nature, then that kind of gets in our way a little bit. That can be for me, that basically means stuff it. You know, this is the way I am. And my experience is that in all the years I've been working in this field, is that that's not actually the case. In my book, almost anything that is psychological, that is nurture-based, can be changed. Therefore, most of your personality can be altered should we want to do that. So if you're sitting there at the moment going, that actually might not be a bad idea, my personality is all over the place, then that can be changed. Confidence can be changed. Self-esteem can be changed because it's taught. We are taught our self-esteem. We are taught our confidence. Now, that's not to say that somebody who is maybe a little bit more of an introvert is all of a sudden going to be somebody who runs through a staff canteen high-fiving everybody on the way going, yeah, I'm here, guys. I don't mean it like that necessarily. But what I am saying is, though, that if you're somebody who maybe finds their self-esteem or confidence a little bit low, then we can do something about that. Now, today is key to that, because if you think about it, how do you know how to do what you do? How do you know how to behave? How do you know how you are? How do you know what's good and what's bad? We talked in one of the earlier sessions, I'm sure we did anyway, about the idea of how every decision we make is made from pleasure and pain, the pull between good and bad, the pleasure, pain, positive, negative. Is your glass half full or is your glass half empty? This type of thing, although one question that nobody ever asks is, what is the cup actually full of? Because a half full cup of something that I don't like, I'd rather have your half empty cup of something that's brilliant. So ultimately, it's all about balance. I suppose what's the cup full of is definitely a follow-on question from a glass half empty, glass half full. But if you think about these types of things, then ultimately, how do you know? Now, we come into the big bangs and the drip feeds that we talked about last time. Ultimately, you've been taught. But it all happens so unconsciously. For instance, I'm going to guess that some of you may be, well, in fact, just let's keep it much more vague than I was about to do it there. Let's imagine that I took you out for dinner. And let's imagine that you come to Glasgow and I take you, in fact, you're probably more likely to take me to this restaurant, right enough, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how this all works. But there's a restaurant in Glasgow called the Regano. Now, the Regano is very famous. I have never set foot in the place. And for one reason, this is risky. I don't like fish. And I don't mind fish and chips. That's fine. But I'm not a big seafood eater at all. Now, you might take me somewhere like that. This is a gross generalization. Some of you are laughing at me. You're thinking, does he think that my life just revolves around fish? Maybe for some of you, that's true. I know that you have very varied lives and some of you will still like a steak. I'm just using it as a generalized example. But basically what happens is, if we were to go for dinner today, I would you might sit with a big bowl of mussels, for instance, and sit there and go, oh, mussels, yay. I'm going to sit there and go, mussels, oh. How do I know that? How can that decision be made instantly? How can I look at a menu? How can I look at someone? How can I meet a person and know almost instantly whether or not I think they're amazing and they're a fantastic person to know, or whether I get, that funny feel you get off some people? How do you know that some people are your type of people and not? How, when you go just simplistic things like clothes shopping, can you look along a rail of clothes? I know not everybody here will love clothes shopping, but if you do, you'll look through a rail of clothes and you go, not me, not me, not me. How do you know? This is, when you start really breaking this down, it's an incredible device, your brain. And this is where we get into feelings. Let me just very quickly share my screen with you, just to show you one slide. Now, if I showed you this the other day, you wouldn't have understood it. You would have thought that it was crazy. Now, if you've not seen the other sessions that we've done, this slide might look very, very busy, but I promise if you just look back over the other sessions that we have done, I promise that this slide will make absolute perfect sense. I can't remember if I've shown you this model before. I think I might have done in the first week, but basically, if you remember, we have this trigger, which is some sort of external information. So you see it, you hear it, you feel it, you smell it, you taste it, whatever that might be. You might smell mussels and go, oh, yumbo, whereas I'm going to smell them and go, give me a steak any day of the week. You know, like this is a really interesting thing. I'm sure some of you have got this in your world as well. But one of the smells, for instance, that I still remember, I'm now 47 years old. I last worked in a pub when I was 25, but I spent 10 years working in catering. And I'm sure this is different the world over. But in Scotland, the smell of a newly opened pub, so the cleaners have just been in, so it's got a smell of like beer and bleach. I know that sounds like the most bizarre thing, but it's actually one of the most comforting smells I ever smell. It just reminds me of opening pubs up, easy days when you just opened up and you had a couple of hours just when nobody was there, you know, all of these things. So we're triggered basically by our outside world. What then happens is, as that information is coming into our bubble, we are ignoring it, we're bending it, and we're making assumptions. This then causes us to have a thought in the inside of our bubble, which we have symbolized by the lemon. And this then causes a feeling that then causes actions. And this feeling bit is what I want to speak to you about today, this bit down the bottom. Now, with all that, just recap. What we're talking about here is your batteries. What are your batteries? I'm just going to stop the share and pop myself back on the screen. Now, when I say what are your batteries, you might think that's a little bit of an odd thing to say, but ultimately, you're driven by emotions. Those feelings that drive every action is emotionally motivated. And what people ask me all the time is, in fact, some people will even say, I'm a motivational speaker. But ultimately, I can't motivate you. All I can do is hopefully chuck something out at you that helps you motivate yourself. Motivation is an emotional thing. If I say the right things, then potentially what I can do is I can stir something inside you that gets you up and gets you moving and gets you motivated. And our values are basically what those things are. Now, I don't know what organization you work for or where it is that you work or what you do. Quick drink of tea. But I am going to guarantee that for many of you, especially if you work for a relatively large organization, this doesn't really apply as much, by the way, in smaller organizations. Can I just say, I'll come to that in a little minute. But in large organizations, I'm sure that some of you have been asked to sign up to a set of corporate values. They'll say things like respect, integrity, trust, customer focus, doing our best, things like that, resilience against adversity or something like that. And basically what these are is what I call poster words. They are words that are put on posters to make bosses feel better about themselves. I'm coming to the small organizations in a minute. So if you're one of them, then I'm coming to you. I'm talking about the big organizations, but they tend to be poster words. I've been in a couple of organizations where they've actually really lived them, but normally they're used like a stick. So they don't live them. It's like, well, actually, you know, you've failed on this, this value of whatever it is. And if you look at any of the big, this is just my background, but any of the big financial institutions, you'll find that many of them have these values. In any big company, go and search anyone, you know, and you'll find, just search for the company name and values, and you'll find these values. And poster words are what they are. So they kind of sit on these things, they put them up on pop-up stands when they do their annual conference, and everybody goes, whoa, look, there's our words. And all the bosses go, this is what we stand for. And then they go out and they go, by the way, you're not good enough. And anyway, I think I might need therapy. Maybe I'm talking about myself here. But when smaller organizations, it's much easier to live by them, which is why I said I'd come back to them. If you're like, there's only 7 people, 10 people, 20 people in your company, even when you get to 20, it can start to be a little bit of a challenge. But normally it's much easier to live them because you've hired people who share your set of values. So it's like you all fit. So we kind of get into this place where sometimes we don't think that values are that important. But to us personally, they are absolutely vital. And they are the source of every decision you make. And therefore, they are the source of all of your motivation. So what I say to people basically is, you do not ever feel motivated. And I know that might sound a wee bit strange, but what I mean by that is you get motivated. Because feeling motivated, if I asked you to think about something you love to do just now, I don't know what that love to do is. It could be anything at all. So just think of something you love to do. It could be a work thing, it doesn't matter. It could be a social thing, a hobby, whatever it is. And if I was to say to you, list me the reasons why you love that thing, what you'd say is things like, maybe I'm just going to guess, let's do for a social or a hobby type thing. It's fun, I get to spend time with friends, I feel part of a community, I feel respected, I love to learn, I love stretching myself, I love challenging. All of a sudden, I've got a mountain climber in my head. I don't know about you, but that's where I am. I very occasionally attempted climbing walls and then found that I had a respect for heights. And anybody that's a climber on here, by the way, could I change it? I probably could, but it doesn't affect my life because I don't tend to climb up mountains. But for anybody that's a climber on here, it really reached a peak the very first time I went to a wall with auto belay. Like there's nobody on my rope. I just have to let go of the wall and just let myself be lowered down. That was pretty much that as a job done. Anyway, we could get back to that. But these things, these drivers are what motivates you. So when you think that this activity is going to get me fun and part of something and learning and blah, 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 all these different things, then you feel motivated to go and do it. You get motivated to go and do whatever that thing is. But they are key to a lot of our relationships. And as I've said a few times, every decision you make. You're a decision-making machine. And this process that you go through before you actually do anything in your world is massive to understand in the field of mental health. So when you do, for instance, a trigger, so understanding your triggers can be a good key, but just remember that it's not the triggers that are causing you to feel, it's actually your thoughts about those triggers that are causing you to feel. But the feelings that those triggers are then associated to are the things that decide then how you behave. So for instance, if we were to go shopping, for instance, there would be a point at which, if we went shopping, that I'd probably be able, and for some of you, I get that this would be much simpler than others, I'd probably quite quickly be able to understand what your value on financial, what would it be, cost benefit analysis that goes on in your head towards, for instance, clothes. You know, if I took you to a shop that, for some of you, where they were selling £4 t-shirts, like Primark, for instance, some of you'd go, oh, I wouldn't be seen dead in a £4 t-shirt. Whereas other you'd go, £4 t-shirts, bargain, let's buy 10. Whereas if I was to take you to somewhere else and there was £70 t-shirts, some of you'd go, now this is more like it. £70 t-shirt with a logo. This is exactly what I need. Whereas some of you would go, £70 on a t-shirt. I can get loads of them for £4 in Primark. Now, this is not a value judgment on who's right and who's wrong in that argument, although you probably just have one, because I bet you when I said that, it's not a value judgment on who's right and who's wrong. You're probably going, well, of course, £70 t-shirt, bloody ridiculous. Or £4 t-shirt, oh my God, they just fall apart. I don't know which you are, but you can't help but make decisions on these values, and they drive everything in your life. From a mental health perspective, for instance, somebody who has a high value, for instance, for security, just as an example, if you've got a very high value for security, trust, let's say in the context of relationships, then what can happen is that you can find it sometimes, not saying for everybody, this is just again a generalized example, but some people with security and trust really high up, maybe honesty, can find it really difficult to let people in. Now, going on what we talked about on Friday, that tends to be because they've been hurt in the past. So stuff has happened that then has caused them to think, oh, do you know what? Their trust has been broken. So their mind has gone, trust is now really, really vital to me. I need trust, I need security, and I need honesty because I don't want to be hurt again. Now, this person, that's totally understandable. I mean, I would hope that as you hear me say that, and potentially actually I've just inadvertently pokey sticked some of you. If you've not heard of Brian's pokey stick before, if this is the first time that you've tuned in, my pokey stick is when I say something that might make you go, oh my God, that was me he was talking about. So I don't do it on purpose, but it is important that I say things that motivate you potentially to look at yourself and maybe consider a change. Now, is trust, security, and honesty a bad set of things to want in a relationship? Of course it's not. It's a fantastic set of things to want in a relationship. The question is, what's the action that then makes you do? If that then makes you say, I can never trust anybody again, and you live lonely, wanting someone to be there and wanting someone to be let in, from a mental health perspective, I would say that's a problem. That's not okay, because basically what's happening is your mind is wanting something, and out of fear, you're stopping yourself getting it. Now, if trust, honesty, and security in a relationship was more about you going out and just making sure that you don't open up too quickly and making sure that you vet any potential, not vet them, like pass them through some sort of like kind of online portal or get people like hire a private detective. I don't mean quite like that. All I mean is, take your time in the start of relationships. Then basically what can happen is that you might be able to find that trust, security, and honesty with somebody that really matches you, and all of a sudden you're in dreamland and they tick all your boxes and they make you feel brilliant. We're going to come back to this person later on. Imagine in somebody's career that actually, let's imagine again, or even better, let's go the opposite. So let's do this one in career and imagine a set of values of independence, fun, and let's add one more in autonomy, like somebody who likes to just make their own decisions. Now, again, are these bad things to want in your career? Not necessarily. Independence and autonomy are the same thing. You get my general gist. Let's imagine it's independence, fun, and happiness. Right, let's imagine that. Right, so independence, fun, and happiness. Now, this person in their career, that's absolutely fine. You may even have a job right now or be in a career position where independence, fun, and happiness are things you get all the time. But let's put those values into, say, the bubble of a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, straight out of school, out of the wrapper, and they want independence, fun, and happiness from their job. Now what they're doing is that anytime they get told what to do, it's hitting up against that independence thing. And this person's like, nah, I'm not doing that. That's not who I am. And they start to rebel. And therefore, constantly what happens, they want to be independent. Constantly they're getting either sacked or they're finding themselves rubbing up against management in the wrong way. Constantly leaving jobs and jumping from one job to another, because anytime it gets difficult, they go, well, this isn't fun. And then they jump to somewhere else. Imagine that basically what happens for this person, independence, fun, and happiness person in the career is, as soon as maybe just there's the slightest downturn, they're already looking and going, where can I go instead? Because it's my choice. I get to make my choices. But what does that mean is they never stick anywhere. Their CV becomes really, really long. And therefore what happens is that very simply, they can end up in a place where they have no career because they're just jumping from job to job. That basically is the summary of my catering career, this guy here. Anytime it got a little bit difficult, anytime it got a wee bit boring, I just jumped to another pub. I just jumped to another restaurant because there was more people to meet. If I fell out with someone, I just left. What it meant is that in 10 years of working in catering, I never moved anywhere. I ended up getting sacked from jobs. I just was all over the place. But if anybody ever asked me, I went, it's fine. You know what? I'll find another job. It's cool. It's just about me. Not healthy, not good, but only because of how I was deciding to apply my values. So when we look at values are these emotional words like security, happiness. And the simple question that I can ask you actually right now is, if I was to ask you, what's important to you in your career, what would you say? if I was to ask you to list the top 5 things, and I'll tell you now I'm going to imagine, I don't know, right? I've got to admit, I am speaking uneducated here. But one of the things that I would imagine is that none of you are involved in Scottish aquaculture for the money, the holidays, and the glamour. That's what I would expect anyway. I don't know. Maybe there's massive money in Scottish aquaculture and I just don't know. So what drives you? What is it that drives you? Passion, happiness, adventure, just learning, challenge, security, maybe you love to research, maybe you're just somebody that loves to learn, maybe, I don't know what it is, maybe the team that are around you, maybe you've been with the same team for years and years and years. It's an interesting thought. The world of values is massive. We're actually going to come back to it on Friday. We're going to mention it again. But just to give you a couple of other things just before we go, what we've got, 4 minutes, that's okay. I hope this is all making sense. Basically, I suppose what I'm saying, I'm just going to very quickly share that slide with you again. Just, if I just stick that up. What I'm saying here now, you've now got pretty much the full model. You're now seeing the whole thing. Triggers in your outside world, as they come in, they are ignored. You ignore certain bits of it, you twist certain bits of it and bend it. You make assumptions based on everything that you've learned over your life. You then create a completely unique subjective experience over whatever it is that you're experiencing in that moment. And that then causes a feeling that then tells you how it is that you're going to behave next. What is it that you're going to do? Is this something you want to move towards? Is it something you're going to move away from? Is this something you like? Is this something you don't like? And that feeling then tells you how you're going to act. Sometimes that action is that you just don't do anything. For instance, I am going to guess again that some of you at least have probably been in very interesting situations on water. Now, I don't mind boats, but you're probably all going to come back to me. I'm going to get a random emails going, no, don't watch that program because of this. Or you're going to tell me that actually it is a fantastic documentary. But I genuinely love Deadliest Catch on Discovery. And I look at it sometimes and I'm like, whoa, like this, as these waves come over. And I'm not really that bothered about crabs, I must admit, but what I am fascinated by is what these guys put themselves through to actually catch these crabs. I'm sure that some of you have been in those situations and just got about your work. You probably sat there, having your dinner as something like rocks around like this. Meanwhile, I would be holding on to something, a pole somewhere going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, because you've learned that you're safe, that tick box happens in your head, and therefore your action is to just go about your normal business. Does this make sense? Do you see how this drives you? This is the key to motivation. The secret to motivation is understanding your values. But as I said, just before we go, one of the things I want you to understand though is not everybody shares your values. Now, this is a very, very key understanding, because sometimes we think that everybody's just like us. But I'm sure when you really look at it, I'm pretty sure you realize they're not. Not only are they not triggered by the same things, not only is their bubble entirely different from you because they get totally different experiences, but their values may manifest themselves in a very different way. And not only that, but sometimes you might share values, but they deal with them in a completely different way, because when we really get into the intricacies of values and how value structures are made psychologically within someone's mind, actually what we start to find is that we have this very, very delicate balance going on. Just to finish, let me give you an example. Let's imagine that we have two people in a relationship who both want trust, just because we said it earlier on. This person, though, wants trust with security. This person wants trust with independence. Now, they both want trust, and they both say, do you know what, I've been hurt in relationships before, so it's very important to me that, you know what, I have a trust with my partner. And the other person goes, do you know what, I'm exactly the same. I feel as if, I really need to trust the person that I'm with to be able to do that. Everything looks rosy. Everything's great. And then what happens is a few weeks into the relationship, maybe even a few months into the relationship, the next values start to trigger and they start to show themselves, because all of a sudden our mask is starting to slip. And what happens is that now you have someone who trust and security over here. What this person wants is, well, I mean, trust means that you'll show me your phone. Trust means that if you've got nothing to be ashamed of or nothing to hide, then why wouldn't you mind if I looked through your text messages? All I want you to do is put your location on. That's all it is. Where are you going? Why am I not coming with you? Why, like, am I not invited? Do you not want me there? Is that because there's someone else there that you're going to talk to? Trust with security. Trust with independence is, by the way, I'm away out. Where are you going? Ah, wait. And just leaving. I'm going on holiday with the boys. I'm going on holiday with the girls. By the way, see you later. And what happens is that we have these two people who look as if they want the same thing, but actually the values underneath are clashing. One of the experiences that I had, I'll leave this as your last story, because this again is how mental health works. I worked for many years for Barclays, the big bank. And financial services was a big part of my background. I loved it, absolutely loved it. Joined there in about 2000, and up until about 2005, the first 5 years of my career were incredible. I loved it. Loved everybody there. It was like a big family. It ticked all of my boxes. And it was just brilliant. And then what happened was they changed the guy at the top. And I would say to you now, it felt like overnight, everything changed and a different corporate culture came in. And the different corporate culture that came in brought in different people who weren't part of our wee family that lived in Glasgow and all knew each other. And all of a sudden, the whole place started to change. And the last 2 years of my career with Barclays were terrible, hellish. But you know what I did was, because I'm a stubborn, you know what, I dug in. And I stuck with it. And I said, this is just me being resilient. This is just me being somebody that just pushes through. This is just me being, brave and courageous. It wasn't. It was me trying to be a square peg in an entirely and completely round hole. And I was trying to squeeze myself into a set of values that I just was never, ever, ever going to fit. Trying to get motivated, I just couldn't. I was stressed. I was anxious. I was down all the time. I was constantly not being able to come up to whatever standard it was that they set, because my value set just did not align with the type of company that it had become. Without going into details, it had become very, very cutthroat. And they brought in a lot of very, very hard ideas. And you know what? It was the driver that I needed to go and start Headstrong. And now here I am, 13 years later, still here doing Headstrong and happier than I ever could be. Now, here's the thing. Where are you fighting to try and be that square peg in the round hole? Where are you looking to try and get your values to match either someone, somewhere, or something where they just don't match? It's not you, really. It's not them. It's just that actually what you both want, what motivates you, what drives your behavior, the decisions that you make, they're totally different. And one of the best things you can do, and I'm going to clarify this on Friday, one of the best things that you can do for your mental health is find somewhere that fits, find someone that fits, and create a life that fits. Anyway, I think that sounds like a nice place to leave it. So I will be back with you on Wednesday, where what we're going to talk about is normality. And we're going to talk about what does normal mean. And we'll talk possibly a wee bit about what's been going on recently, because what is normal and what do they mean when they say creating a new normal? Anyway, if this was your first time, I hope you enjoyed it. If you're in here, like for all of them, hi. And if you're watching on the YouTube channel, hi to the future. I hope it's fantastic and amazing and you're living a good life. Anyway, until I see you on Wednesday, please stay safe. Any questions, remember you can email me and I will speak to you again on Wednesday. See you later, everybody. Bye.